So time now for our second news review of the morning, where we take you through the papers. Here with us are political journalist Zoe Grunwald and entertainment and royal correspondent at The Telegraph, India McTaggart. So welcome back to both of you.
Thanks, guys.
And if you're watching in the last hour, you would have seen that we went through lots of the military implications of what's going on, what Trump's latest signals are and all of that. And in this hour, I noticed that we're kind of really focusing on the effect on other nations of the conflict. You've picked out, Zoe, an article in The Guardian which focuses on tourism.
Yeah, it focuses on tourism, but also, as you say, the impact on other countries across the world. And, of course, for some countries, such as Thailand, tourism is a huge part of their economy, and that is having a huge effect. I mean, there are direct flights to Thailand, but obviously a lot of them do stop over and refuel in the Middle East. So since the war erupted, 1,000 Thailand-bound flights have been cancelled. Thailand's tourism ministry has predicted that an 8-week closure of the airspace, which it considers a worst-case scenario, could result in 600,000 fewer international arrivals and losses of around 934 million. But it's not just India, it's not just Thailand. India is also dealing with constraints to its hospitality sector. It's struggling to get all the supplies it needs for its food. You've got security fears in Europe. So Norway, the US embassy in Norway was hit by an improvised explosive device earlier this week. Airfares in South Africa have jumped up. There's petrol rationing in Sri Lanka. Basically, the point is that this conflict has such a huge impact on loads of different parts of the economy across the world. All these countries are grappling with the aftermath. This isn't just concentrated in the Middle East. We aren't just feeling it here in Europe. Every country is dealing with some kind of shock, whether it's oil prices, whether it's tourism, whether it's supplies and cost of living, because of what is happening there.
Absolutely. And look, the thing is as well, with no end in sight, this is going to continue, and I think analysts are suggesting it's going to go on for months and months, because even with just because of the damage that's been done so far.
Right, that it will reverberate over a series of months, even though it was supposed to only last a few weeks, wasn't it? Well, we're now going into the fourth, and I just wanted to pick up on the second page of this Guardian article, because there are some more surprising examples in here as well. Like, for example, there's a crisp shortage of a favourite crisp brand in Japan that makes crisps of wasabi and beef flavour. And their company, they're having difficulty securing enough heavy oil for boilers that heat the cooking oil. So it's so specific. Fertiliser in Asia, 30% of which normally transits through the Strait. It's things you wouldn't think about. And, of course, it mentions that the Kremlin can hardly believe its luck as it comes out as a winner. It comes out as a real winner.
I mean, the fertiliser is a huge one, isn't it?
Yeah,
that could affect food prices with the transport being affected by the oil price rise as well. So there's a sort of, double whammy there. And that takes us on, actually, doesn't it, to a double-page spread in the Times, which focuses on sort of contingency planning that's going on behind the scenes here, I'm sure, in countries around the world, but certainly here, what could happen if the war is protracted?
Yes, exactly. So, obviously, the unfolding car crash in the global gas market and the mounting danger that entire countries will run out of oil is also sort of taking effect here. So the Times has gone with this article, which states oil crisis forces ministers to plan for rationing at pumps. So the Times is saying that if the conflict continues, politicians may ration petrol and diesel supplies, and they can do this by capping, essentially, the amount that fuel drivers can buy at a time. And apparently we have less than 900,000 tonnes left, which is equivalent to a 26-day supply at a normal demand rate. So ministers are not implementing this yet, but they will, and they do have emergency powers under the Energy Act to control the supply and demand of petrol, should they need to. And also the International Energy Agency has urged the public to work from home to conserve fuel. So we're already seeing all of these sort of contingency plans potentially needing to come into effect, which is pretty scary.
Yeah, also suggestions to drive a bit slower, to use less fuel and that
Absolutely.
kind of stuff.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because the government's suggesting that they've got everything they need. The government spokesperson said the UK has strong, diverse energy supplies. The way to protect families and businesses is to get off our dependence on fossil fuel. There's almost a sense of not quite seeing the fear that many people have in front of them as to what could come next.
I think that's the thing. A lot of people were already struggling with the cost of living. They were already worried about putting food on the table, meeting their energy bills, meeting rising interest rates or rents. And this just is, a double shock, which many people are just saying, if I couldn't afford it then, how am I supposed to afford it now? The government's talking about long-term plans, but people need relief in the immediate term.
Let's move on to a story that you picked out, Zoe, in the Times about new towns.
Yes, so as we know, the Labour government is planning to build new towns. This is part of their big push for new housing and new construction in this country, trying to push forward their plans to overhaul the planning system and actually, get Britain building again, which was, if you remember, one of their slogans, although it hasn't been heard much of late. But the Times has seen a list of proposals for some of the names of these new towns, including Elizabethtown, Pankhurst and Atleton, which are proposed names for these new towns that Labour want to build over the next decade. Up to 12 places will be announced for the location of these towns, and three of them... up to 12 places will be announced for these towns. Obviously, they are named after, significant figures in British history. So you've got Mary Seacole, who's the Jamaican British nurse who carried the wounded soldiers during the Crimean War, who could lend her surname to a new town, as could Emmeline Pankhurst, who was obviously the organiser of the suffragette movement. And Atleton will, of course, be named after the famous Labour Prime Minister, Sir Clement Attlee, who launched a huge post-war new towns programme, which this Labour government is trying to emulate. So there's going to be lots of... Obviously, all of these names will be put up for consultation for local communities to have a say in. But I think it's quite a nice little bit of news that actually this government is trying to push forward getting something done, getting new housing built.
Wonder how it'll be impacted by what's going on in the Middle East, but I do like that there's a lot of
obviously, yes,
commentary around what new towns actually mean. The most popular responses when it comes to new towns are boring, bland, concrete and roundabouts, apparently. People think of new towns.
Us Brits love our roundabouts, so you can't actually build a new town without
a very efficient
one.
way of getting the junction working. I love them. I love them. Right, where we go next?
Meningitis outbreak. India, you have been looking at the Daily Mail's coverage of this.
Yes, which seems positive because experts are saying that the outbreak is fizzling out. Obviously, yesterday we were seeing reports that sporadic clusters could appear over the Easter break if students bring it back to their households. But experts are saying that those would be containable and that another super spreader event like the one seen at the Club Chemistry nightclub in Canterbury is highly unlikely. So this is good news. Cases have apparently now reached 29, just up from 27. But Paul Hunter, professor in medicine at the University of East Anglia, said we can be fairly certain that the peak from the initial super spreading event will have passed. And that is obviously extremely positive. And they're still urging students in Kent to get jabbed. And I think already 15,000 people or so have been urged to get the meningitis B jab.
Yeah, in fact, we're going to be live at one of those vaccination centres in the next hour to see how long the queues are today. Anyway, we're out of time. Thanks both very much.
Next hour. Thanks, guys.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?